We'll come to order for our work session agenda Tuesday, May 21st, 2024, a little after 9 a.m. We're here this morning for our budget hearings. Our first appointment is with Eileen Hill, Information Technology. Good morning. I would do that.
All right. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Clerk, for scheduling me for this morning. Appreciate that. The budget request for IT fiscal year 2025 is $2,361,882. It's about a 2.58 increase from last year, roughly about $59,000. Per your request, I did proactively look at all the budget line items and reduced a few. Some of the budget line items just ebb and flow, just by the nature of what they are. Hardware maintenance, software maintenance, for example. A couple of requests included in special projects, an application solution for implementing a code enforcement automation, and replacement of some network hardware. The plotters in the GIS areas are reaching their end of life, so 2 for that office, those offices, GIS and mapping. And we'll repurpose the ones we replace, if we can, into areas of low production. The Microsoft 365 project is ongoing. It's complex and getting more complex, and we want to be able to take advantage of that licensing in the best manner possible. So I've asked for some training dollars or consultant dollars to assist us with making that a great implementation. That is the request in a nutshell, and I'm happy to answer any of your questions.
Thank you. Commissioners, questions for IT?
It's informative for myself.
Commissioner Laird.
I've forgotten, what's a plotter?
It's a large inkjet printer so that we can print the maps that you see on the walls and other things out of our mapping departments.
And then secondarily, and I know I've asked you this before, and it's just more of something that's on my mind lately, and that is the use of AI in the county.
Right.
Because everything I see, a couple seminars I've gone to, they say that if you don't have it now, you're already behind. That's what they say. So I don't know whether we're behind or not, but I know that it's something that they're saying we should implement in various areas. So are you, I assume you're looking into
I
it.
am. I am. Next week, there's a Wyoming Digital Conference in Cheyenne, and there are a couple sessions specifically on that topic. I've been tracking webinars and training sessions and discussions on NACO, and I've signed up for those. I have some thoughts on how we may be able to use it. I also want to be cautious in understanding that it could be used for good or bad.
Have you looked at the cost of it or anything like that even?
I have not.
I've always wondered what that may cost.
What, do you have any ideas of?
Well, it's basically how you would deal with our maintenance and employee records, things like that. That's so instantaneous, it sounded to me like. And I'm just, I'm not even in kindergarten on this stuff, but everything I get and what lawyers are doing with it now is mind-boggling. I mean, it's writing their briefs, it's finding expert witnesses, it's drawing diagrams, it's getting maps, it's doing
Right.
all that, and it does it in seconds and minutes.
So we'll just see if there's ways we can apply it.
Almost like magic.
Yeah, it is interesting.
Commissioner North.
Eileen, for the code enforcement stuff, what exactly is that gonna?
It will be a module that will integrate with the application that's already in the building department. And that will allow both departments to be able to see what cases are ongoing. It will assist with tracking a case, flagging cases, generating letters, following up. Right now, it's pretty much a combination of a GIS app and some manual work. So that's kind of a high-level review of it. But
Okay,
does that help?
yep. it
Okay.
does. Thanks.
Commissioner Friel.
Eileen, just a question of the two plotters, both the assessor's office and GIS, do they get a lot of use off of those plotters? They're used quite often?
Every day.
Okay. And kind of the question I was headed to after that is it something that we need to, or is there a way of having one that could be utilized by both, or is there just too much?
We might be able to use one if we had one in just one of the areas and then share it. They're in different parts of the building, so it'll be somewhat of an inconvenience, but I can look into it.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Just, they're about $8,000 a piece, each plotter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we do use one of them to scan. So when a plat comes in to the county clerk's office, we scan that in so that we can attach it to the parcel in the GIS.
Okay. So 16,000 for two.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Laird.
Just a comment to you too, Mr. Chairman and Eileen. When you mentioned code enforcement, one of the things they did say is that people are using it where somebody would come in and say, I want to do something under this code, and they in AI, it answers it in 40 seconds as to whether they're in compliance or not. It's almost mind-boggling what you can get out of that with the proper programming. So when some of these issues we have now, getting employees for these places, if we have now computers that can answer the questions, at least on the phase of it, for the commissioners to see how it's analyzed it and on what theories it's analyzed it, and you're getting it like this, it seems to me something very worthwhile for us all to be looking into for future issues.
Thank you, Commissioners. Eileen, thank you for being proactive on those items that you felt could be reduced. You noted them: professional services, software purchases, hardware purchases, and hardware support. Thank you for doing that. your salaries are essentially constant. I was gonna ask maybe for a bit of a breakdown on the $396,432 line item, 7101-01168 repair, maintenance, and contracts. You know, there were a number of years where that line item was zero, and then last year it was budgeted at 364,000. The amount expended as of May 3rd was 246,000. So what is that 396 for? It just says security on your spreadsheet.
Yes, last year, the cyber insurance broker recommended that 10% of an IT spend be spent on security, controls, software needs. And so the easiest way I could figure out how to break that out so that you could see it was using an empty budget item, line item. 7101 hadn't been used for years. So I extracted all of the tools that we use, the disaster recovery services that we have, backups, and put them into that line item to demonstrate how much we spend on cybersecurity. The label for the line item hasn't changed though, so that it can be a little deceiving, I suppose.
It's just stated a little more general
Yeah.
and perhaps vague. And I don't know that there's anything you could or should be doing differently on
Okay.
that, but it was just a question I had. I think preliminary indications are that there's going to be a shortfall between revenues and expenses. And so I want to give you the first opportunity to tell me where in your budget, like where are the more of the discretionary items that if the commission at the end of this process over the next 30 or so days decided that we had to make some cuts, give me some indications as you being the person best in the know with respect to your department, where maybe some of the more discretionary items or items that could be deferred to next budget year might be.
Okay, right off the bat, software purchases 7112. I think that one could be reduced by at least 30,000. We could forego the code enforcement in special projects, and that's another 30,000, so that's 60 right there. We could purchase one plotter and get by, so that's 8,000. Discretionary is in special projects. We could use some new network hardware, and that would be appreciated, but that's an area where we could cut back. Let's see. In the contract labor and services, I could potentially get rid of 13,000 in there. I put some money in there in case there's remodeling that goes on in some of the offices here at the courthouse. That would be for cabling and network connections and such. But if we have now a maintenance person who has low voltage experience, that could be utilized. So there's some discretionary there. Let's see, what else?
Eileen, what was the first one again? Did you?
7112, software purchases.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thanks for having the ability to just off the top of your head give us some ideas. You know, if possible, we're going to fully fund every single department.
Okay.
We recognize, as Commissioner Laird mentioned, how vital your department is to the county. We believe that, but at the same time, there's only so much to go around. So
Right.
I thank you. Commissioner Friel.
Eileen, just one more question. So to go back to line item, I guess 7101, the repair and maintenance contracts that the chairman was talking about. I see that there's 246,000's been expended out of 364. Do you anticipate expending the rest of that by the end of the year?
No, I think there'll probably be about 50,000 left in that by the end of the year.
Mr.
56 maybe.
Mr. Chairman, currently 278,770 has been spent through yesterday
Oh, thanks.
with a balance of 85,329.
Okay, is that another, and maybe I missed it, but is that another line item that potential, because it looks like it's gone up. So you said 10% of what the budget is what that ends up being roughly?
Roughly, but actually it's a little bit more. The cyber brokers recommend at least 10, but I think it's a little bit more than.
Okay.
And I would prefer not to cut in that area.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Eileen? I don't have any either, so I think you're free to be.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Something I work with the county clerk on is copiers and circuits, the network circuits. So if you have any questions about that or you want to cover it later. Cover it later. Okay, thank you.
I did see that, and so it's good to know. If Tracy needs some follow-up with you on that, then we'll let you know. But
Okay.
I think we're good. Seems like a long list, but
Yeah.
I know there are reasons for it too.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have the expended through yesterday, so if you have any questions about any account lines, I have it pulled up here, so I'd be happy to update you on those numbers.
Great, and then I think typically you get us a replacement, some replacement sheets as we, in the weeks to come, as we get a little closer to the end of the budget year.
Not on expended per se, but because I just replaced some sheets in your books this morning because some things came in late after
Okay.
I already had the books completed and whatnot. But yes, I'll be filtering sheets in and out of your books. so.
Okay, and so commissioners, please let our clerk know if you want an update, because a lot of the numbers that we have in our board book are as of May 3rd. And obviously we're past that, and that number, or those numbers will continually, many of those numbers will continually change between now and June 30th. Very good. It's 9:15. I do see Miss Wessels here. Are you prepared to go? All right. We're going to be done with our entire budgeting process by about 10:30 today, so, yeah, I'm just kidding.
That's fine. Thank
Wishful
you.
thinking. So yes, our appointment is with Kelly Wessels of Community Action Partnership. Greetings, good morning.
Hi. So our particular request was modified ever so slightly. We have a 1% that is being applied this year of 10,000. And then we requested just slightly less than we did last year of general funds of 80,513. The total amount equates to just a little less than 4% of our actual overall agency budget. What is important about these funds is the fact that they are local match funds. These are local funds that we need in order to bring in other funds. If we don't have match, then we can't accept other funding sources. And that is a domino effect in our budget. So we try really hard to be respectful of the limitations. I am acutely aware. We have seen, as you saw from my narrative, a significant reduction in budgets. We still operate a healthcare clinic that has to pay the same prices as the larger clinics in town. So we have higher expenses, but less revenue sources post-COVID, and we're making adjustments. One of the things that I have done is work really hard to diversify our budget. We are going to be receiving city funds, which we had not received for several years. So that's an opportunity to expand and get some of that diversification. In addition, we're receiving funding from the Collective Health Trust to support some activities. In addition to that, I put in for 2 supportive services projects with the trust, one of them being a resource developer. We were granted that opportunity. We were notified last month, so we will be utilizing the grant writer consultant to help us build revenue sources over the next year. We also, and they're allocated to us 24 hours a month to write proposals, research funding sources, and look for additional resources and in-kind support. We also have deployed what's called a shared services agreement with the trust. We are one of the entities that will be receiving human resource and strategic planning support for the next year. Those are critical elements because those are things that we are very fortunate and blessed that Danielle gives us some consulting as she is able to do so. But she is not a dedicated resource to us. And with the type of personnel, the credentialing, and a lot of the other expertise, it is really important that we have some sort of HR oversight that is beyond the executive director, because there's a few other things that I have to do. So we are maximizing the resources that we can obtain through the trust and those opportunities in order to build some capacity over the next year. These are things that otherwise, if we were to have to contract for them, would significantly increase this budget, and we would not be able to do it. I'm not sure at this point where you'd like to go with this or what you'd like to discuss. I'm open to your questions, and we can go from there.
Commissioners, questions for Kelly?
I do. Did
Commissioner
you-
Laird?
When you and I talked, we were talking about bar none as being kind of, I don't want to use your words, but do you have enough funding to take care of the people of bar none?
So what is difficult about the different outerlying areas has to do with utility assistance, water and shutoffs. And also something that is starting to demonstrate some impacts as well. And that is that the population that lives in those outlying areas is aging rapidly. So they're reliant on certain types of infrastructure and support. Utility assistance, especially water, is a very quick shutoff. If you have your water shut off, it's a habitability issue. And if you're a renter, you will lose your housing because you don't have a water connection, right? So in the outerlying areas, what's difficult about that is oftentimes older adults have a habit of not wanting to share that they're in trouble until it's too late, and then have difficulty accessing resources because they are unfamiliar with those types of systems. So our efforts in those areas is to really communicate clearly with the utility companies and water services that are being provided to say, hey, if you're noticing something, please let us know. Communicating with landlords and property owners the same information, because there are vulnerable populations that, they're raised to be self-sufficient. And older adults tend to be that category. And we're seeing a lot of vulnerability in the older adult community.
Do you think that, what was your budget from us last year, do you recall?
Last year, I received 135.
I see.
But that's also because it was the last year of the previous allocation of 1%.
Can you still use the 135?
I'm currently short in my budget, just over $90,000. We're working on our draft budget for the next fiscal year, my board. And the draft that we have is we're just short 90. Now, we may have to make some cuts, but the areas that we won't sacrifice are making sure that the entire community is served. It's one of the reasons that I thought it was important to develop a relationship with the city of Casper, because a great deal of our services can be centralized to that area as far as rental assistance and utility assistance. So establishing that relationship so that they can contribute towards what we do as an effort allows us to free up other resources to ensure that the wider community and the entire county can be served.
Yeah, I was confused because when we talked, I suggested you might just ask for what you got last year, but guess you changed your mind.
No, I sent you the information.
But you didn't
but
request it here, though.
no, we did not modify ours, in fact, and then as late as yesterday, there was an indication that things were even shorter than anticipated. My thought process is this. We want to be, we're not a county department, but we are definitely an entity that extends your reach into the community to people that may not always be seen in these rooms. And so while we are a small part of the budget, kind of a speck, we're an important speck because we are the only voice that addresses that for this particular entity. We do a few things that I think are important. One is we help leverage other departments, i.e. health department. We are able to help extend their resources. We share a nurse practitioner in order to save both our budgets. So when you look at what are you going to get the best bang for your buck, that's my job, is to make sure that that's what you get out of me. And that the money that you are providing, if it's flat or if it's an increase, it goes towards matching other funds so that we can increase the rest of the budget and serve more individuals. Currently, we're at over 700 individuals that have been served since October of this last year, which is my CSBG year, just in rental assistance alone. We had a point in time count that grew exponentially and is now documenting for Natrona County a very specific number of unstably housed individuals post-ERAS. Those are individuals who have either suffered eviction or are on the tipping point of eviction because they cannot maintain the rental rates that are currently in. And inventory is small, so the challenge is how do we keep them housed? One thing that I will give you as far as what I consider to be good news is that we have started establishing a tenant education program, and where people go through renter's education and have a curriculum and a certification at the end of it so they can present that to property owners and landlords, demonstrating that they know how to rehabilitate their credit, that they know how to speak and for perhaps a poor rental history and have rehabbed their ability in order to be good tenants. We're changing some of the dynamics so that people are better capable of taking care of their responsibilities rather than being dependent on crisis payment.
So my final question is, if you don't get the 135,000, will that affect some elderly people in this county negatively?
We will have to shift our priorities of other funding sources and probably not be able to serve general population in some aspects. That may be impacted by workforce support and things like that.
Other questions from commissioners? Kelly, you mentioned that you're receiving, or you're anticipating receiving some city funds for the upcoming fiscal year. What is that amount?
Right now, let me look at that. Thank you for asking that. Right now, it's in the amount of, this year will be right under $20,000. 19,750. We received, this last year, we received $3,000 because of the way that it was staggered, and it's on a table of over 5 years. So it will grow in that case. We have also added some FEMA funds to the portfolio, which we did not have before. Those funds, I think, are really important because they remedy mortgage, and they're for people who have that one-time crisis and don't quite meet that under 200% poverty, but they need help. And we have a lot of working folk in this community that just one crisis payment will change. They can be fine, they'll be good, and they'll be back on their feet. And I think that that's important to note when you see that the benevolence funds of this community are being really impacted by over the past year. There are fewer funds for even the faith community to be supporting some of these efforts. So our role, we've been really communicating strongly with the faith community so that we don't duplicate each other's efforts, and that we make sure that everybody has an equitable opportunity to receive.
What percentage would you estimate of your clients or recipients of funding or other services that CAP provides are residents of the city of Casper?
I think when we ran the numbers for the report, I want to say that it was right, or at least, it was just under 40%.
And one of the things that I've heard has been an issue in the recent past is the incarcerations of
Huge.
of folks, and I think that rental assistance, especially with ERAP going away, can be really critical. And I think that there isn't necessarily a correlation of, keeping people housed and incarceration rates, but I think that there is some connection in many circumstances, at least.
There is, I think the stronger connection is behavioral health impacts. I think we see far more of that. We see it clinically as well as in the office. We see it through the systems intercept model, the SIM group that is facilitated. It is one of the reasons that we have written some funding for funding through it's actually a workforce grant, Pathways 5, and we have requested a little over $1 million to support the re-entry transition as it being stronger and developing a rental assistance stream that is unique to that. We also have submitted a similar grant, and I'm working on a behavioral health expansion grant for the clinic. We have a problem with size and scale. We're not large, and we have a target population. But proportionally, trauma creates greater behavioral health impacts. And so if we can expand what we have and we partner well with CWCC, then we can address some of those and keep people housed rather than blowing out all the time. The biggest need in this community, based on survey, is permanent supportive housing. There is a definite need for that. The scoring, there is a scoring mechanism that's utilized on every unstably or homeless individual that comes through our office when we screen and do eligibility. And just in a very Reader's Digest way, that score is about vulnerability, but it is also about their probability of being able to maintain housing independently. The majority of people that come in that score in ours are at about a 15 now. That's an incredibly high score. People who can maintain independent housing are right around a 3 or 4. So when they're coming in at a 15, that is way above the threshold for permanent supportive housing, which means they need someone to be able to watch over them and help them live independently. No different than we look at our older adult community who requires caregiving supports, and our disabled, developmentally disabled community who requires living supports.
You know, I commend you for getting the city on board with help on your budget. I hope that that grows in the future.
Me too.
I think there's some compelling reasons for it to grow. I also think it's great that the Collective Trust, who is in the business of improving healthcare in Natrona County, is part of your budget. I think it's $60,000 over, I forget the period.
That's
but
for a year.
for a year.
Yeah, that's to, the $60,000 that we receive from the trust is to support our case management efforts and wraparound services.
Who is doing the grant writing for you? I know that's a need in the
Yeah, that's,
departments
so
in the
that's
county.
going to be through the trust consulting that they've gifted. That is a group called the Dotted Eye. And the consulting group that is going to be working with us on strategic planning and HR development and deployment is Peak Consulting.
If you're, I know that the county is only 4% of the agency budget, and I appreciate that your request of $80,000 is really, for all purposes, the same as it was last year. If it's less than 4%, if the county feels that it has to reduce that by a small amount, does that disqualify CAP from the local funding requirement that you have that then supports the foundation for your ability to get grants from other sources?
The two primary grants that we match funds with from this has to do with what's called Emergency Solutions Grant, which is issued through the state. ESG is HUD funding that is for rapid rehousing and homeless prevention, meaning rental assistance. It is a 1-to-1 match. Currently, that's at almost $57,000. And on top of that, I have a continuum of care permanent supportive housing units that we manage, we lease, we manage, and rent out. That match is $30,000. So right there is where your match comes in. That does not count what I put towards the CPI grant, which this runs through the county to me. So those are all, that's where that is. It's very tangible. I can't spend $57,000 if I don't have $57,000 committed. The other part of it is that in CSBG work, which is my core grant for community action, is it requires a level of investment from the local community that says, yeah, we believe this needs to happen here. So when I put on my CSBG reports that I don't have local funding, whether that be county or city or any other local entity, that could potentially affect one of my largest grants. That could keep me from receiving almost, or having I get just under $700,000 from the state Department of Health. They could reduce that because they're saying you don't have local support.
And you don't currently get funding from the other municipality mills or the other towns?
Not at this time.
Okay.
We are, and I've been here 2 years. It's been a lot in 2 years. But we are making moves. We have a location in Mills now that we did not have before. We have opportunities. I spent the last year in Leadership Casper and had some opportunities to meet with individuals in Evansville and some of the other sub-communities to be able to establish those relationships. Relationships take time, and finding out what we both need from one another, how I can be of best service to those entities, and what that might cost takes time. But I think it's an important investment across the county. We are working as a family resource center pass-through from the Wyoming Children's Trust Fund, and working with Mercer on that. Those are projects that are going to go, especially when you consider the events of the last few months affecting our youth. That's an area that we're starting to work in, and we are the pass-through entity for that. I feel like we have a great deal of potential to do those impacts in those sub-communities and also in the education community.
Well, I hope you in particular, I think you're doing a great job.
Thank you.
I think you in particular and Kat just in general need to be a part of that conversation about youth violence in our community. And I know there are people actively working on that. And I know that if you're not involved in some of those conversations, that I can get you at that table.
We are most definitely there, and that is because we are looking at the generational aspects of this, because parents and youth are impacted, and that's going to impact another generation if we don't do an intervention.
Yep. Thank you.
You're
Any
welcome.
other questions?
Thank you for your
All
time,
right.
gentlemen. I
Thank you.
appreciate your time.
Yep.
Thank you.
Have a great day. Our next appointment is with the library and Lisa Scroggins. We're definitely ahead of schedule by about 20 minutes. So I think we'll take a 10-minute break, or unless somebody else has other ideas, I think that's what we'll do. Thank you.
It's unsettling.
A lot of things up there are a little unsettling.
Okay, Tracy, I want to show you something.
All right. We're going to come back to order. Our next appointment is with the library and Lisa Scroggins.
And Lisa
Oh.
stepped out for just a
Oh,
moment.
there she is. There you are. Great.
So she'll be right up.
Mr. Board Chair, how are you today?
Good.
Good.
How are you, Mr. Chairman?
We are doing okay, thank you.
You're getting lots of rain on your crop.
Yes, and falling farther and farther behind on the
we're-
chores. But moisture is good.
Well, I work indoors and I'm able to get behind on my chores just fine.
Whoa,
We're on. Good.
okay, awesome.
We picked you up.
There you
There you
go.
go.
Do you have any opening
Uh,
statements?
I am here to represent, obviously, our Board of Trustees, the county's Board of Trustees for the library, and is it picking me up? I should lean in. You guys can hear me. We have had another, I think, a useful year. We've stayed under budget for the whole year, and I'm always impressed and pleased with the executive and her staff. So, we have some changes to the way we're presenting our budget requests. It's what the board feels we need to have in order to operate. And we'll operate with whatever we get, obviously, but this is what we feel based on the information from our staff on what can be done. So Lisa's going to present that to you. And I just wanted you to know that she has our full support for everything, so.
Thank you for that. Boy, I kind of want to take that and bend it, and it doesn't really do that, does it? But boy, it picks up well. Thank you, commissioners, for your time today. I know we're here to visit about our budget request. You see that we submitted 2 requests on behalf of the library. The first one is for our general operating. And as my board chair noted, we're taking a little bit of a different approach this year with our general operating. So in the past, the library has relied on funding from outside sources to help us balance our budget. And we realize that this doesn't paint a fair picture to the commission on what it takes to run the public library for one full fiscal year. And so that is what you see in front of you as this request is what it does take to operate the library. That's not adding services, that is sustaining services at their current level. So that request is for $3,390,964. And when I submitted the letter to Tracy and to Commission Chair Nicolason, I included a distribution. It looks like this. So you should have this in your packet that I believe kind of spells out where those funds would be allocated and distributed into our budget. Our request, as presented, would be 87% of our request would go to administration, physical plant, and security. That is the weighted salaries, that staff travel, tech support, various contracts that are required to run the library, as well as the basic day-to-day upkeep of this building that we're in, and our contracted security. So as you can see, that's the lion's share of the request. And then programs. Programming is a basic service of public libraries. It is how we engage with the community. It's how we share information, provide reading support and services, literacy efforts, and a variety of different things. That is something that has not been funded by the county in the past, but as a basic library service, it is a cost that is incurred. And so 3% of our request would go towards programming. I do note here that there's some of our programming we get with grants, and so that is not included in that request. So that would be, the grants are supplemental. And then books and materials. So we do receive 1 cent funds for books and materials. I think it goes almost without saying that providing books and materials to the community is the fundamental service of a public library. We do receive 1 cent funds, but we do purchase beyond what we are able to get in 1 cent funds for books and materials for our community members. And that is 5% of the request. And then the balance, the remaining 5% of our request at $185,000 is for just operating supplies. So that could be office supplies, postage, phone, all of our marketing expenses. And so that brings our total, as noted in the letter, to $3,390,964. Do want to stress, and I said this at the beginning, this is not to increase services or increase positions or increase anything. This is to sustain the library services at their current level. We are fortunate sometimes to be able to increase or change or add things to the library, and we rely on grants for those. This last year, we added telehealth services in response to a statewide acknowledgement that telehealth and access to medical care is particularly hard in Wyoming. And by providing a space for telehealth services, we are helping to fulfill that need, and that was 100% grant funded. And so it's great to be able to provide those services that reflect well, not only in the Natrona County Library, but on Natrona County, without it having to come from our pocket. I really like to get as many grants as I can. But again, this request is just to paint a very clear picture to you on what it costs to operate your library. So do you have any questions about this?
I have a couple comments, Mr.
Yeah, Commissioner Laird.
Thank you for this presentation. You guys are doing a really good job over there, and I think it was time for you to present it this way, because the time I've been on here, I didn't even know how much the books weighed and what you had to have for a building to hold up your books. That was a startling revelation to me, I think, like it was a lot of people. And so it's been a really good education, and I think it's well known I'm for the library, and I'm for getting things accomplished there. This issue with the maintenance, I've asked the commissioners a couple times that we should set aside a few million for maintenance, because all of our buildings are kind of old, and they're even older. Some of them are even older than Peter, and he's the youngest guy on the commission. So I like your approach, and I support it 100%. The other commissioners, I hope, have some questions of you, because I'm not sure what, I know some of them have complete knowledge of it, but I think explaining for the public to understand what it takes to run this library, what it costs, who uses it, what it costs to maintain it, what maintenance has been setting aside. And I'm gonna leave you with one last thought. I was reading something this morning, and I know that to get a new library, there's probably gonna have to be a request from the public in some form. And so I came up with a term I think you and your staff ought to consider,
Okay, what is that?
because it's a crusade to save the library, and a crusade to give the people of Natrona County the best library that can be given to them, and to have them be a part of it. But I don't believe things can be done just willy-nilly, and I don't say that anybody's doing that, but I think that when I say amp up the game, when I said that to my hockey team, we went on a crusade, and we won. So good luck.
Awesome, thank you for that,
You're
I
welcome.
appreciate it. Can I mention one thing that I failed to mention when I briefly presented this? So that outside support that we relied upon for quite some time, part of that, a big portion of that came from our foundation. And I know that people sometimes wonder about what kind of support they can provide to us. So our foundation does have some funds in an endowment. They cannot touch the principal of that endowment, The Library Foundation operates off of interest earned off of their endowment, and then they do one annual appeal every year. So those funds are drying up. As we know, for several years, the foundation was dipping into their reserves to be able to meet the needs of the library, and that's pretty much gone. And so we're kind of at a crossroads with funding, which made the timing of deciding to present the budget in a very clear way of what it takes to fund the library full year very timely, because the foundation will not have the funds available to continue to support the library at the level they have been. And in fact, this year, the foundation cut their support by 15%, noting that next year we anticipated 20 to 25% cut in their support. Again, it's based on the funding that they will have available. So I failed to mention that. And that's an important thing to note. With that said, does anybody have any other questions for me?
Commissioner Friel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Lisa, the question I have under programming, you have the $49,999 difference, dollar difference are expenses covered by the NCISD number 1 and Joint Powers Board grant, which is not guaranteed in the future. So are you asking the county to cover that now? And is it covered? Is that portion of it covered currently?
So thank you, Commissioner Friel, for that question. I am not asking the commission to cover that now. We did receive a grant for our summer reading program, and because of our fiscal year, that spans 2 different fiscal years for us, but that is funded for this current summer that's coming up. But when we presented our grant request, we actually presented it to the Joint Powers Board, and then that board, and Commissioner Milne, you sit on that board, so please pipe in if I'm not able to articulate this accurately, but that board is concerned about their pot of money and how big it is and how, it's dwindling. So they said, since most of the beneficiaries of a summer reading program are also students at the school, and the school receives money out of the same mill that the Joint Powers Recreation Board does, they kicked our request to the school, and the school did fund it. But they were very clear on it's a one-time funding. Not to imply that they will not consider a request from us in the future, but I just note that we don't know if that would be seen favorably in the future or not. I believe the school is taking the school and the Joint Powers Board are taking a different turn with their mission, and it's my understanding they may be leaning less into the educational component of that and more into the physical recreation. And if that's the case, that could jeopardize funding for the summer reading. But all that said, we are not requesting that for this year. That's why you see the 87,661 is different than the 137,660, because the balance there is that funding that we have secured already.
Okay, so to take that a step further, so if I understand this correctly, this program's been put in place and it was with the school district, but if they decide to not fund it anymore, you're asking us to pick up the cost of the program?
So this 87,000 is not for summer reading. That's for programming year-round. So in this request, I'm not requesting anything for summer reading, but just wanted to point out that in the future, that could be part of a request.
Okay, so if that could be part of the request, then go down to books and materials below that. That also said this funding may be available or may not be available in the future. So again, is this another?
It's kind of the same picture. So we have the funding secured already. We have funding from the city. They have allocated 1 cent funds for our materials collection. And so in that right-hand column of the 236, that's we have part of that secured already, so we're not asking for that. As we know, with 1 cent funds, that comes up for a vote every 4 years. There's no way to know what the city would do in the future, but just wanted you to be aware that part of what we're using, we're relying on city funds, but I'm not requesting this. I'm not requesting what we've already received from the city.
And I think I'm asking, is this going to end up being a future request to keep these programs moving? Is that what you're saying here?
That is not what I'm saying. I just want to be really clear to let you know, when we're relying on grants, we have no way to know what would or would not be available. We will continue to seek grant funding for those things. I feel a certain level of confidence that the city understands the importance of having a public library for their residents in their city. They do count us as one of their, I think, top 10 or top 12 assets for the city of Casper. Their support is nowhere near the level of the county, but we are a county library, but their support is really important and very impactful. I feel a certain level of confidence that the city will continue at that level. If they do not, then we have a decision to make. So at a future date, the decision would be, do we ask for additional money from the county, or does that begin to impact the level of collection we're able to provide?
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir, thank you.
Commissioner Mill.
Good morning, Lisa. Just if you would, I missed the percentage cut this year and then next year potentially by the foundation.
So this year, the foundation, we received a 15% cut. Actually, it was more than that. So this current fiscal year that we're in, we received, in addition to a normal operating request that pays for like databases, and I've got that list here. They pay for databases, they pay for programming, marketing, they do a newsletter for us that helps spread the information. Anyway, just a variety of different things. So in addition, in this current year, there were two kind of one-time special requests. So we recently rebranded at the library, and part of that, we have 3 banners, large banners hanging on the exterior of the library. I don't know if y'all have seen them. 2 of them face Midwest, 1 faces 2nd Street. That carries our old branding, and the foundation funded for us to change those. So we're in the process of doing that. And that will be foundation money. That's $8,000. And then $6,000 was a system in the boardroom so that we could host meetings via Zoom or Teams network or whatever. And so those 2 expenses, when we remove those, that's one-time expenses. I think that's like $14,000 that they funded for us. When we remove those from this year budget, then we're receiving next year a 15% reduction on the balance. Does that make sense? It actually is like a 27% reduction overall, but I removed the one-off projects. So
by this year, you mean the
coming year. They just approved, going into the next fiscal year, a budget support for us at a reduction of 15%. However, when they did that, they said that's a tentative award and that we will re-meet in September to see actually where they're sitting, because they're relying on some grant funding being successful, some grant requests being successful, and if that's not the case, it could impact what they have available for us. So it could be more than 15%. And then next year, I think it's 20 or 25% is what they anticipate.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Lisa, I had a couple things. Do you have the amount, do you know the amount of the foundation's endowment
Oh,
approximately?
I'm going to say approximately $3.2 million. But again, that's funds that they cannot touch the principal.
Right.
And that was largely through the state endowment support for public libraries.
I understand. Do you have a copy of the foundation's budget for the upcoming fiscal year and for the current fiscal year?
I do not, but I could get that for you and send it to you.
If you would do that and copy our clerk, that would be appreciated.
Yes, sir.
So that'd be for 24 and 25. The Friends of the Library, remind me what the contribution is from that organization, both in terms of dollars, but generally speaking, what are some of the things that they help fund?
So one of the things they help us is public awareness. They do a really good job in advocating for the library through donations to various organizations and entities in Casper, such as WBI, the hospital, schools, daycares, and they will provide books and reading materials that they have received by donations. So that's really good, but that's a non-tangible, right? So that's an added benefit. Tangibly and financially, what they do varies from year to year. The foundation 100% relies on the revenue from the book sales they have. They have 2 book sales and then 2 bag sales a year. They do a great job. What an awesome group of volunteers in our community. I just can't speak highly enough for them. So what they contribute to us does fluctuate from year to year. I'm just going to give it a ballpark, if that's okay, Mr. Chairman. Since I've been here, it seems like it's been anywhere from about 20 or 22,000 on the low side to maybe 27,000 on the high side. They gave us a little more through COVID. They had received an ARPA grant as a fundraising entity that couldn't raise the funds at the level they previously could, and so they gave us a little more money during that time. I believe in the upcoming year, they are slated to give us, I may look at Greta real quick, I'm thinking $25,000 is their commitment to the upcoming year.
In terms of a percentage increase, I think the number I show from last year is 2.748 million was the approved, which was greater than the budget request amount of 2.691. So 2.748 last year and 3.390 this year. Is that correct?
That sounds right. I don't have those numbers in front of me.
Sure,
The
so-
addition, I believe last year, the addition between our original request and what was awarded was because of some salaries.
Mr. Chairman, that's correct.
Thank you,
Hey.
Tracy.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
That was part of our budget.
I think that's back of the napkin former attorney numbers. I think that's like a 25% increase in 1 year. So I think that is a challenge as I look at it, just in general, knowing the picture of the county overall. And as I've mentioned already this morning to some of the other folks that have presented, I think there's going to be a substantial gap in that revenues are going to be by a lot under requested expenditures. And so that is certainly something I flagged. What I don't see, Lisa, in the materials here in my book, and I don't see it in some of the historical stuff that you sent me at my request, which was library budget information for previous years. I don't see detail of the library's budget. Did I miss that? I see, for example, on this distribution, the proposed distribution,
Right.
2.9 million for administration, physical plant, and security, that, and the other numbers, programs, books, and materials, supplies. But I don't see how that's broken down. For example, under administration, physical plant, and security, it's got weighted salaries, travel, tech support contracts, utilities, security, some other things. And I do have that information for previous years, but I don't think the commission has that for your upcoming year.
I can provide that.
Okay, I think that would be helpful. With respect to that item in particular, 87% of your request is for administration, physical plant, and security. And you note in this distribution sheet that includes weighted salaries. Can you give us more detail what the weighted salaries, what you mean by that, or what the increase was, or what you mean by weighted?
Certainly. So weighted salaries are what an employee earns and then what the employer's expenses are that are required. So that could be everything from insurance, the employer side of insurance, to federal taxes. What all is included?
So I think that's
Wyoming retirement.
I think that's what we refer to as burden.
Okay.
But okay. So I think we need more detail.
Certainly.
And I think that your proposed budget would be helpful in that respect. What is the estimated percentage of patrons that are City of Casper residents?
And it is an estimate. Trying to think what the last time, I'm just going off the top of my head. I don't remember the exact number. It is well over 90%. Or it's over. I don't know if well over is the correct terminology. It's over 90%.
Approximately 90%.
Approximately
And
90%.
I don't think we're interested in holding you to an
Awesome.
exact number, but to give us a sense.
Yes, sir.
And it's my understanding the city's contributions just or only in basically the 1 cent funding.
That's correct. Yes, sir.
I don't have any other other questions on the budget side of it. I think you want to talk to us about the other components some more.
The supplemental?
The $2 million
Yes, mhm.
request.
Yes, sir.
Before we get there, commissioners, do you have other questions on the budget side? Commissioner North?
I do. This for Madam Clerk. What is the current expenditures for the library? You have that? If you don't have it, you. Oh. Well, I knew
Lot
you.
to scroll through,
I
I'm
knew you
sure.
would have it. It was just a matter.
Mr. Chairman, currently they've expended 2,748,896. So they've expended their full budget
Okay.
in their general operations.
And Commissioner Nicolason, to your point about the percentage increase, again, that's just how heavily we were relying on outside sources to fund the public library.
Thank you, and thanks for the question, Commissioner North. I forgot that one. Thanks, Madam Clerk. Okay, do you want to switch gears? I'm not seeing any other questions.
I'll be glad to switch gears, but I will just say, I point out that here we sit, we're not at the end of the fiscal year, and we've expended the entire county budget. And we can't continue to do that. We cannot continue to do that. That being said, yes, Commission Chair, I am ready to switch gears.
Great, go ahead.
So in addition to the operating request, I also submitted a supplemental budget request. And this was in response to a letter that we have received, and I'm referring to the collective we, so it was the library and the county commission, received the letter from the Deputy Casper Fire EMS Deputy Chief in January of 2023 that required us to do two things. One of those things was to fix the non-functioning, fire alarm system in the library, and that was completed. And on behalf of the Board of Trustees and the patrons and the staff, I appreciate that that was addressed because that was a tremendous life safety issue. So that was completed earlier this fiscal year, and that was one of two things the letter requested. The other thing the letter requested was that we go back to the 2013 MOA Facilities Condition Report at the library and address the life safety issues that existed in 2013. At the time, the library and the county were expected to address those issues, and they were tabled for 10 or 11 years. And so we were told in that letter that we needed to make sure that we address the life safety issues, or to have a plan to address those. So in the letter I sent you, I did quote that Deputy Chief Garvin requested a formal plan be developed to address the other life safety issues identified in the 2013 Facility Condition Report produced by MOA Architecture. And so It's really not, I don't believe it's incumbent upon me or the Library Board of Trustees to determine that plan, but I do think it's our responsibility to present a plan to you for you to take action on or to come up with another plan so that we can respond to this appropriately. So the plan that we thought made sense was we realized that a new construction of the library is not going to happen anytime in the near future. That would, of course, resolve not only the life safety issues, but the mechanical issues, the ADA issues, compliance issues, and a variety of issues that also existed in that report. But that's not going to happen unless you come into some kind of a windfall, or unless I come into some kind of a windfall. That is not likely to happen. So given that scenario, the trustees feel like they are proposing, at my suggestion, that the county set aside and create a designated reserve, a restricted reserve for capital construction project for a library. And what that capital construction project looks like would be up to the commission. But we propose that we set aside $2 million to start saving towards the eventual inevitability of needing to do something to fix the current situation. My proposal would be that it would be a new library. Reality may or may not prove that to be the truth or the eventuality, but we need to start saving and putting money aside for whatever we need to do in the future to fix the problem of the library. Because while people think it looks good, and it does look good, and is functional, and it is functional to a large level, that report, if it shows us nothing else, is that it was in critical failure in 2013, and we need to address it. I don't believe, when I look at the Deputy Fire Chief's letter, that he's saying you have to do something now. I read it to say you have to have a plan. So this is the plan that we propose, to start saving for that.
Very good. Commissioner Friel.
So I got a few things to say about this, because in reading this, 2013, 11 years ago, we were informed by the fire department that there were issues that needed to be addressed. MOU was at the same time, correct?
MOA?
Or MOA.
This was a result, yes, that was a result of the MOA facilities condition report, is my understanding.
And in that, they point out that there's ADA compliance issues. We have issues with the building that need to be addressed.
Yes,
So now fast forward to today, and we want to put $2 million back every year and build up a capital funds line item to eventually, as you would like, to build a new library. So we still don't know what the total cost of a brand new facility would be. So let's just throw a number, because that's all we've ever done, is if it's $40 million, it's going to take you 20 years to raise $40 million. And 20 years from now, that $40 million to build the library may be $80 million. So I don't know where we're ever going to get ahead, except for we're going to put a lot of money back. I know you want to say something, Mike, so let me finish real quick, and then I'll let you jump in and tell me your thoughts. The problem I have is, in the time that I was on city council, the time I've been sitting on this commission, at least 3 or 4 years, we've had discussions between the foundation, the city, and the county as far as a land swap goes. The latest thing that we've talked about is make a decision. You're either going to stay where you're at with the foundation land, you're going to do a land swap and have a new location, a new site for that. Those are the two things that have been on the table. We even said that if you end up picking a location, that the county was looking, I believe it, $500,000 is what we were discussing up here, so that you can actually have an architect sit down, draw for a piece of land that you had decided upon, what that library is going to look like and what the cost is going to be, so we would have a finalized cost of that. Since then, our conversations, the only conversations we've had lately have been with John Griffin about this. And lately, that's stopped. First Interstate Bank comes up for sale, so we go look at that, which I don't know how many you've looked at in the past, but we look at that, and that wasn't going to work out for you. So now we're back to where the county's got to put $2 million back every year until we come up with enough money to build a library. At what point are we going to make a decision that, hey, the land that we have now is where we're going to build that library, and we can move forward and find out what the cost is going to be? We're all over the board. Frankly, I'm at a point right now, I agree. I think you should have a capital fund, and you should put $2 million into it. And then we should sit down and figure out what that's going to cost, because now it's publicly out there that we have ADA issues, we have fire issues, that building's got issues that need to be addressed. So you need to create a line item, and we'll put some money back and fix the existing library and upgrade it to what you need. Problem solved. Somebody needs to make a decision as to what direction we're going and what we're going to do with it. This has been going on for years. So, in my opinion, the answer to that is, you got an existing building, let's figure out the cost and fix the problem. I know you got something to say, Mike, so go ahead.
Well, do you mind if I just address the land issue first? The library and the library trustees did make a decision. We like the current piece of property that we own. We like the location. We entered into discussions about a land swap, largely at the request or the encouragement of the former sitting commission, who at that time said if there was a way to fund a library, maybe not using a 6-penny tax. So when you talk about saving money for a new library, it's saving money towards a project. I don't think we'll ever save at $2 million a year enough to build a complete project. So it's going to require quite a few different things between a capital campaign on the foundation's part and another source of funding, whether it's a 6-penny or a revenue stream of some other sort. When we were looking at building a library and talking to the commission in the past, they really encouraged us to look at a land swap. They felt like a land swap would put what we consider to be, I think I just lost my mic, what we consider to be one of the best pieces of property in downtown Casper that the Library Foundation owns. If we did a land swap, it could be maybe perhaps more profitable to other entities in the community that maybe bring in a different revenue, right? So the library is not a direct revenue generator, but an indirect revenue generator. All of those discussions were held out of respect and at the request of the former sitting commission. We knew that if we did a property swap, it had to be tied to, we're willing to engage in discussions about a property swap if we know that we get the funding to build a library as a part of that. Because if we end up on that smaller piece of property without funding for a library, that, as you know, required a lot of pieces together that included swapping for a smaller piece of property that has county-owned property adjacent to it. If we're not building a library and don't have funding in the next, I'm just going to make up a number, okay? So like in the next 10 years, then what is the guarantee that we have that that adjacent property that the county owns is still going to be available? And if it's not, then we're on a piece of property that won't even fit building a library. So that's why it was really important that we had funding to build a library as part of a property swap. We were unable to secure funding for 2 reasons. There was a grant, as you know, that we had an opportunity for a capital construction grant for $12.6 million. We pulled that application because the county is engaged in other, obligated to other projects and was unable to guarantee the balance of our project. So we pulled from that. We felt like with the passage of the constitutional amendment, where you could invest your funds at a higher rate of interest, that this county would then see a potential revenue stream that they haven't, an increase in revenue that you hadn't benefited from before, and proposed that that would go towards a new library. And the former commission was engaged in those discussions, and it seemed fairly favorable that seemed like a reasonable idea or a reasonable approach. And I believe this commission is looking to use those funds for other projects or for general operating. So without funding for a library, we can't really switch for a smaller piece of property that doesn't fit a new library in the future. It's our obligation to make sure that we have a place in the future, and we have a place, and it's on the river. And that's what we're committed to at this point. And I say at this point because if somebody walked up right now and handed me a check for $40 or $50 million and said, here's your money, but we want you to switch property and we want you to go to that other location you've been talking to the city about, in a heartbeat. But no one's walking up to give me that check.
Okay, so let me address two things you just said. You said the county land, the possibility of the county land adjacent to, I'm assuming you're talking about the current location of the health department.
Yes, sir.
And if that didn't become available, but that was part of the discussion, was in that land swap, it was the city and the Library Foundation were going to swap that land, and the county was going to put in that building. So that piece of land where the health department sits right now. So I don't know how that would go away, because that would be part of the agreement of that swap. The second thing is that if your board of trustees have decided that that's where it's going to be, is where the Library Foundation has the current location right now, and that's it, you're set, you've made your decision, then the question I would have is, the chairman and I are currently trying to nail down a time that was requested of us by the Library Foundation and the city to have a discussion within the next week to further have a discussion over the land swap. So
I have no knowledge of that.
who in fact is in charge of deciding what the foundation is doing with the land?
So the foundation owns the land, but the foundation exists to support the mission and vision of the library, and should be receiving their direction on this project from the library trustees.
And I'll say that I haven't had that discussion with the foundation yet. So right now, as of January, actually, or February, we decided to go into a holding pattern because we needed to find sources of revenue before we could do anything else. Ultimately, whether we keep our land or swap it, if we get rid of the land and don't have a library, we've not gained anything. We've only moved laterally, or even, in this case, it would be a downward. And so the trustees have always held that we needed to hold that solid, keep that whole. And part of that is getting a compensation for the land. But if we do that, we only have that compensation. We don't have a new library. So right now, we are still in a holding pattern. And our feeling as trustees is that we need to start setting money aside. That was brought up by this commission to us last fall, was, well, there needs to be money start to be set aside. And this wasn't, any requests we've had in the last year were not in the budget. Understandable, I would look at things the same way. And so that's what we're directing our library staff to look at. And I'll be strongly indicating that to our foundation tonight, actually.
And I will say, that's why it would be important to include the library in those discussions when you're talking about a location for a library, rather than having those directly with the Library Foundation, which is a nonprofit that supports us.
So that answers that question. To get back to the 2 million, whether we build a new library or fix this one, at the moment we have $0 available for that. And so we're asking that we start setting money aside, because that really is one of the keystones. If you're looking at it from a critical path method, critical path placement to plan out a project, part of the major part of that critical path to us has been and is capital available to build it with. And barring that, if something breaks, or the city inspectors say, you know, we can't go any farther with X, Y, Z, you have to change something, there are $0 available for that. So we're not asking that you today commit, or in this budget process, commit to building the new library. We're saying that if we don't start sending capital aside in savings, and it can still be in your investment pool, and you'll still be earning money on that. So it's not, if you don't start committing that money for the library building, then whether we build a new building or fix the one that is existing, and I don't think it's fixable. That's my own layman's opinion. But you're looking at, I've heard numbers from $13 to $20 million to upgrade the library just to operate as it is. So that's still $13 million more than we have in the bank today. If you don't start setting that aside, it's not going to happen.
Commissioner Friel, hang on just a second. We have allocated about 30 minutes to each of these. I see one more this morning that we have with the Health Department. Does everybody on this commission have the ability to go till noon today for, what time do you need to head out? Okay, so I have a number of questions. I think that maybe 3 or 4 of the commissioners have some more questions, so let's keep going, but let's be mindful of Commissioner North's schedule
Okay.
and the Health Department's schedule too. Commissioner Friel.
I just want to say 2 last things then, is that, first of all, I think that if we were to commit $2 million per year, we're not all going to be here in the next 10 years. Maybe some of you guys are. I don't know. I'm not going to be. But I feel that I'm tying the hands of future commissioners to be able to make a decision whether or not they want that money to be going into this. Is there a need for the library to be fixed? Obviously there is, because we've known it for the last 11 years that there's things that need to be taken care of over there. So I personally think that being that we're in a holding pattern again on where it's being built and when it's being built, you have a library that has issues with it right now. So if you're going to put money somewhere, you probably ought to put it to where we're not compliant, whether it's ADA or fire suppression or whatever it might be. That needs to be figured out, and we need to make that right so that we don't have ourselves in a jam, and you put it back into the building where we're at. I mean, that's the long and short of it. For decades now, we've said here, we just keep going in a circle saying, hey, let's build a new library. It never happens. So let's fix our library we have now and be done with it. That's where I'm at.
Commissioner Mill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So MOA did the survey, and we've got reports from City Fire and whatnot. Have we actually gotten or have done an actual evaluation? You've heard 13 million, but So have we actually got some numbers of this is life safety, this is maintenance, this is whatever, and with the specific projects, points of concern and those corresponding costs?
Thank you, Commissioner Milne, for that question. I do, and for the sake of time, I'll be glad to kind of hit some high notes, but I can send this to you. But I did go through the MOA Facilities Condition Report as it existed in 2013. They provided numbers for 2013 prices. I used a multiplier based on one of their projects was to upgrade the fire alarm system that included design and installation. And as we know, we just completed that project. So I had some actual numbers from that. They estimated in 2013 that project would cost $50,500. In actuality, it was just over $129,000. And so I used that multiplier and attached that to all other projects here. That's just a rough estimate, but I think it puts us in the right ballpark. So for life safety remediation, it would be just shy of $2 million. It was 1.994, $1,994,000 to address the life safety issues as noted in that report, but that we have already completed the fire alarm portion of that. So that would come down a little bit. Then, because that could trigger, as we're looking at completing some of these, because we now operate under new codes that exist that weren't in existence in 2024. 2013, God, the years all blur together. To address the building code and ADA deficiencies, again, that were identified at that time. That's using those projections. They were at $687,000. That now is $1.7 million. There's health risk issues. Some of this has already been addressed with the abatement of some asbestos already, but that was $94,000. With the multiplier, it becomes $240,000, and then some long-term maintenance. So what would have cost us in 2013, just over $4 million, is now $10 million. I just did these numbers yesterday. Yesterday. So Mike had not seen those. But again, those are estimates, but it kind of gives us discussion estimates, like what are we even kind of talking about? So could we
you
piecemeal?
send that to us,
I
please?
will be glad to. Yes, sir.
I asked you to send me previous year's budgets for the library. I think I asked for previous 3 years, maybe. And you did send that to me. The $2 million proposal concerns me. First, I think we need to be transparent to the public about really what that $2 million per year would be for. And I think it's been characterized both as to deal with life safety issues and with, anything left over would go to a new library if and when it's built. I have been supportive of a new library. I am currently supportive of us trying to figure out how to provide the best facility we can to the public that we can afford. I take some issue with this in that I've heard you say this morning that our plan is for you to give us $2 million a year. But it's incumbent on the commissioners, not us, to come up with a plan. And I think that when I read Chief Garvin's, when I look at that letter and it says come up with a plan, I think that's a dialogue. And that's prioritization of, these are red flag issues. And when you had one of those in the form of an alarm system, we took care of that. I know that there's a lot of water under the bridge about, well, let's not put money at an old building that we may be getting out of somewhere down the road. But you've budgeted for the last 3 years at least an amount for life safety issues. In 2021, $132,000 for life safety issues and $0 were used. In 2022, $212,000 budgeted for life safety issues and less than 1% was used, I think $1,000. In 2023, $209,000 was budgeted for life safety issues and 1%, or another about $1,000 or $2,000 was used. 2024, the current year, you've used 13% of the $209,000 budgeted for life safety issues. And so, I don't think that there's any blame to be assigned here. But I think the reality is that there appears to me, and I wasn't on the commission all those years, but appears to me that life safety issues were factored in at the rate of $130,000 to $209,000. And I don't know before 2021 if that was the case, but that may have been a substantial amount. And again, not to cast blame, but it seems that if there's a plan, that this is what we want to do, this is how much it's going to cost, and this is when we want to do it, we can probably move forward. At least, not speaking for the commission, but I would be in favor of moving forward. what's been presented this morning and what's been presented here for this $2 million, and that to me is not necessarily a reasonable approach or the best approach. It might be reasonable, but to me, it doesn't feel like it's the best approach. So I would commit to you to work with the library, and I know your liaison would too, to come up with what I would consider a plan. Just know in the meantime that I feel this commission, if there's a red flag issue and we get another, letter from Chief Garvin that says thou shalt take care of this now, it's going to happen. We're going to take care of it because we do value the library and the services it provides. And I do think you and your board are doing a really good job. But I do think there are some issues with what's been requested on this $2 million that we're going to have to take a close look at. Commission, go
Mr.
ahead,
Chairman,
yes, please.
to your point about what was budgeted for life safety over the last couple of years, I'm going to give it a ballpark on the guess. So it was prior to when I was here. My predecessor, Bill Nelson, came to the then Board of County Commission requesting 1 cent funds to address the life safety issues. At that time, the total amount was $779,000 and some change. To address those life safety issues, it was around the time that the report had been completed and the first letter was issued. The commission did approve that. It was, of course, it went through a vote to the community, and the community voted that we need to fix the life safety issues at the public library. And you started the process, and you know what that process is, right? So you get this money, and it was awarded over a course of 4 years, with a smaller amount being in the first year, and then the last 3 years as they were gathering those revenues, then it would be available. So that money came into the library, 1 cent funds came into our budget, and then it was a bust cycle, and tax revenue was down. And so all bets were off. And unfortunately, the commission didn't receive the revenues they projected, and so everything was stopped. There were some very specific things that went to the voters for those life safety issues, and that's what that money was for. So we have not spent that money. We've spent a little bit. Since I've been here, we put in some fire, automatic electronic fire doors that stay propped open, but then if there's a fire, they electronically, the circuit breaks and they close, and it addresses that issue. I know we did that. We've done a couple of small projects with some handrails, but we do not spend that money because we owe an obligation to the voters and to this commission to make sure it's spent the way it was approved. And so that's why that's carried on our books the way it is. I believe, I'm looking at Greta, did you say 1 year those funds went up? I haven't even looked at, I don't even look at that number very often. I believe you said 1 year we budgeted, it was increased amount. And I believe, is that where the bookmobile? Yep, so when we sold our old bookmobile, we came to this commission and said, rather than selling that at an auction through Road and Bridge, could the library sell that and retain those funds? I think I can sell it and still keep it as a bookmobile and get a lot more money for it. This commission said, yes, you can. So we did that, and then we took the revenue from that and we put it into that life safety to save it for the future project of whatever, rather than just throwing it into the general budget. We did spend a little bit out of that, like $3,000 or $4,000, but that's about it.
Thank you, Commissioner Laird.
I told you that 2 million was going to get a lively discussion
You
from the
did,
commissioners,
thank
didn't I?
you.
And you need a lively discussion
course.
because everybody learns a little something from lively discussion. So I think there's a way that we could set 2 million aside, but it just wouldn't be in your pocket yet. It stays in our pocket. But I think that everybody here recognizes that if we're going to stay in that library building for a time, that it needs to be repaired, period. And to be hovering in this netherworld where We don't want to repair it because we're going to get a new one and everything gets worse and everything gets more expensive, and all of a sudden now you're throwing numbers out that just aren't realistic anymore because it's tripled or quadrupled in time. But I think that's true of all of our buildings. All of our buildings need a lot of money pumped into them for repairs. And we've got to face that mountain, I know that. But I think you've opened up the crusade today. What I'm hoping is you'll get your budget. This $2 million, everybody's made a good point about the $2 million. But I remember something my grandfather told me when he bought his first house. It was about 70 years before he was born. And I was asking him how much they paid for their house over by the hospital. And he didn't want to tell me. He said it took him 5 years to save the money. And then they got it. It was $2,600. And so you got to save money if you're going to build buildings. The county has to do it. Everybody has to do it. The idea of setting aside $2 million to either repair the building or to consider it money that you would use to build a new building that you would add to it if you were asking our people of this county to pay for it in a form of a tax is a worthwhile endeavor. And I do agree with Mr. Friel about, binding other commissioners. I don't think we need to do that. I think we can do what we were able to do while we're in office. And if new commissioners come, your crusade continues there. Because this commission will probably change here shortly. But to just be stagnant isn't my idea of a good time either. So your proposals are well taken, and I think you've got this started. Mr. Nicolason wants some more information, and I would like to see that information myself, because the library is a worthwhile place for our children and our people.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner.
Yeah, any last comments?
Last comment. We came into this process as trustees with the idea of getting something started, getting a discussion started, and maybe getting monies set aside, because those were the complaints we were getting back from commissioners, was that, well, there's nothing budgeted, we don't know what to do. And that's understandable. I would be in the same position if I was sitting in your chair. I feel the same way, actually, sitting in my chair, representing the other 4 people and our county. My point in talking to Lisa about this and bringing something forward was at least gives us a starting point. It's not, we must have this. It's, let's start looking at how we set this aside. And from my point of view as a citizen, not just a member of the trustees, is that that money can be set aside in your investment portfolio. And you designate it maybe just in an oral dedication, but that way you're earning money on it. You're not losing anything. It's not an expenditure until you actually spend it. But if we don't start doing that as a county, as a community, we're going to be in the same boat 6 years from now that we're in right now. We'll be in that boat next year. We'll be in that boat 6 years. We were in that boat 10 years, to your point, Commissioner. So that was my point, and our trustees' point in bringing this forward was not to start a argument, but to start a discussion where we can start looking towards what we can do. Because you're right, it is uncertain. It's floating, and if we don't start nailing things down, and sometimes it is like nailing Jell-O to the wall, but if we don't start nailing things down now, when will we? When is the appropriate time? So even if you're only saving a few dollars, and 2 million, if you look at even $10 million, is take us 5 years to get to, right? But at least during that time, if an emergency crops up, you don't have to say, well, what are we going to have to set aside instead of this? What are we going to have to do instead of to be able to pay for this? We won't end up in that position. So that is planning. That is part of that critical path, as I said. We have land, but we also have a building that we have to take care of now because we have citizens coming in at the rate of, what, 20 or 30,000 a month who depend on us being the trustees and the commission to make sure that it's a safe and realistic environment. So that's where this number came from. Yeah, it's pulled out of the air. But if it has to be 1.5 or 2.1 or 0.7, at least we have a starting point. So that was my point. That was my trustee's point in bringing this forward, having Lisa bring that forward. So that's my final say.
And with that, I appreciate you for your time. I'm going to head back to the library where we are entertaining 1,000 first graders today in the library. So it's a hopping place and it's raining. So that's not a good day to have 1,000 first graders in the library. Mr. Chairman, would you like me to leave this? This is my bullet list from the points that were brought up in the 2013 report. And then it's, with the multiplier, what I propose. Do you want me to leave this physically with you, or do you want me just to email all of you? How do you want to receive that?
Yeah, probably not.
Okay.
Well, you've got, I think, a short list of items, documents to provide to us.
Yes, sir.
If you can send them to our clerk and Michelle,
Be glad
they
to.
will make sure that it's officially part of our documents in this process and moving forward. And it'll probably be, we'll keep track of it better that way, if you know what I mean.
Fantastic.
Okay, well, thank you very much
Thank
and good
you.
luck with all those
Appreciate it.
kids. Yeah.
Thanks, Chairman.
Our next appointment is with Anna Kinder with the Natrona County Health Department. Go ahead.
Technology. No. I can send it to you. But I'm a little bit conflicted due to the fact that some of the things that have happened in our community as of late, as well as being at some national conferences where they're talking about mental health issues, healthcare for the homeless, et cetera. So I come with a little bit of a heavy heart. but wanted to give you a little bit of an update of some things that are going on. I have to tell you that we have an amazing group of staff, and I know that they do great work. The brochure that you have before you, the colored one, actually goes through all of the services that we provide, with a little bit of a snippet that goes along with that. But then the presentation has kind of evolved over time, and I can definitely email it so it is in a digital form. But wanted to thank you for this opportunity to provide the update and the funding request and some concerns that I have in the community. We feel very much like we're part of the county. While we have an outside board, we still see ourselves as very much aligned with county. We're working with many different entities, trying to do different partnerships, et cetera. So it is a very collaborative relationship that we want to continue to be seen in that light. As a reminder, our mission is committed to protecting and enhancing the public health and well-being in Casper and Natrona County. Our tags are prevent, protect, and promote, which all three of those definitely have significant meaning during what we have going on. We serve everyone between preconception to end of life, from prevention to treatment, care for specific chronic illnesses, ensuring safety in food and water, preventing outbreaks, and preparing for emergencies that are natural as well as man-made. We added a door counter. I apologize, there is a few too many zeros. I was a little crazy with myself. It is 1,560 average visitors come through our door. Those are just individuals that are coming in to seek services, while we have multiple people leaving the building to do services out in the community, which include our maternal child health, environmental health, our educators, and our adult health staff. So I would venture a guess that we have a lot of movement that is going on. That top line is the total, more out of a curiosity, because it's very hard to track our numbers. Some people utilize our medical record system. Some go and talk with our inspectors. People just come there for very different reasons, asking questions, looking for support, et cetera. And so catching that or documenting that. So that was part of the reason that we put that there, just to find out like how much activity is there. I can also hear how many times the door slams shut when the wind is blowing. So on the next page, you'll see our financial picture. You see that the county does provide 15% of our funding. We did ask for level funding from you all this year. We are going to the city this evening. We'll be pursuing once again a 10% increase from them. Last year, they did not do that. We're now returning to those pre-COVID times of funding. So that is why we're going back down. We have taken all the reductions in our budget that we possibly can. I believe probably some of the next steps could possibly be impacting reduction of staff, which is the last thing that I want to do, because most staff have 2 to 3 jobs already. But that is the reality of what happens in these modern times. On the next page, I thought this was interesting. People ask like what our reimbursement looks like, if it's Medicaid, uninsured, or private insurance. And you'll see that 82% is uninsured. So those are some of the funds that we need to come up with by other mechanisms through federal, state, Title 10, as well as support from the city and county. So I think that took me a little bit more by surprise. And then our private insurance, while we do billing for that, it's only accounting for 4% of what we do. On the next page, you'll see, because I think there's always conversation of who does what and where as far as city and county, you'll see that our inspections are broken down based on like our body art, campgrounds, childcare, food services, hotels, and pools. And you'll see the majority of that lies within Casper. We do have different groups in the other disciplines. We do go to the farthest parts of the county that you can possibly go for some of our inspections. But that's just kind of a breakdown to show you where we go as far as city or town. The following page is our maternal child health visit. So while everything continues to have financial reductions or things like that, babies are still being born they haven't slowed down. So we have, on that chart, it kind of is a little bit interesting. The total number of referrals, those are duplicates. So we get all information from vital statistics, but also there may be other ways that people come and are referred to our program. So the total number of individuals is actually those individual cases of where our nurses get a referral to go and see either pre-conception or postnatal. Then it will break down like who declined any services at the form for vital statistics, those that we have scheduled for visits, those that are contacted and declined, with the last column being not contacted due to limited staff. We did have a period of time, you see August, where we didn't have staffing to be able to serve individuals, but there are a significant number of people that they receive a letter and a brochure. We educate them about the services that we provide, but we're not able to directly provide them any services. The next slide is very busy. I hate to put a bunch of text, but it was really hard to narrow it down. But it's talking about maternal child health as a preventative service, looking at all of those substance abuse exposed children, which we work on plans of safe care. So anyone that comes into the hospital that test positive for substances in the mother or the child, they are referred to a team that we work specifically with them to get them the resources that they need. But we're also working with moms while they're pregnant and up till age 2 to ensure that they're getting the developmental levels they're supposed to, trying to educate mom how to eat correctly so that we don't have a low birth rate, which I'll talk about here in a minute. But it is a nurse that goes out into the home, helps with breastfeeding, working with the mom in all areas, making sure that we're as successful as we possibly can. And it is not based on income or risk. And everyone is available to that service. The following kind of breaks down what our sexual health services are. You can see that by far we do a total sexual health visit. Different tests are illustrated there. We are seeing an increase in syphilis in our surrounding states, which requires us to also increase our syphilis testing, HIV testing. We also do birth control, which you can see, IUD placements and removals, Nexplanon, long-acting, and then the confirmed cases of chlamydia and gonorrhea is an extremely high number. We're typically either first or second in the state with the number of cases. Not a great thing to be known for. We know that we have increased expenses in everything that is now going to a cloud base, requires you to have different technology to be able to put all of that in there, and IT support. Medical supplies and cleaning supplies continue to increase, employee expenses, and utilities. But what we're also seeing is we're increasing what the department is doing in order to prevent some of the chronic diseases. A lot of behavioral and mental health services that we're providing or being part of a team that does that. And then it's just kind of areas that are part of public health services, just not ones that we have done typically in the past. We look for grants in all areas, probably more so now than ever before, both on obviously the building and as well as operations, trying to look for ways to bring additional funding in. If you look at our current workforce, I find it fascinating that the majority of them did not live through COVID. And that is there's few of us that remain that know what that was like, which is probably good for some. But we have 19 employees out of our 33 that are less than 5 years time. So we have to put a lot of time, energy, and investment in each person for education to be aware of what goes in with a public health agency. The board did vote to increase salaries last year with the market study that we did with support from Danielle at the county to look at making sure that we were at a comparable rate because we were losing staff rapidly, constantly, and constant turnover. Since we've been able to raise the salaries a little bit more, we haven't had as much turnover. So with that, workforce development, we have received funding from the Wyoming Department of Health and Centers for Disease Control, as well as a boost grant from the Natrona Collective Health Trust, which I know that they have talked to you a little bit about that, which will be more about strategic planning, because after COVID, we are looking for ways to stay meaningful and impactful in the community. Maybe some things that we have done in the past are not as relevant or as impending as a need, such as behavioral health and mental health. We're doing workforce development and training our staff to ensure that they're taking care of themselves in order to take care of others, as well as internal operations, HR, marketing, market studies, retention, training, as well as the Board of Health will be going through strategic planning as well. We did have great success in the legislative session this past session with House Bill 74, which did give us an increase. We received funding from them, the Wyoming Department of Health, for public health nurses. So we have 8 nurses on staff. And what was happening is we were receiving the same amount of funds from the time that we went independent in 2015. So they never gave us an increase since 2015 for those nurses. Now we are leveraged with the same amount for our nurses as state nurses are paid, as well as in the future, every time a state nurse gets an increase, then we would also follow suit, where that has not been the case before. So while it may not be a huge chunk of money that will be coming to us for that purpose, at least we have the recognition and what we need to have for the nurses to be equivalent to what the states were getting, because we weren't seeing those increases. As we probably know, that there is a new building coming. There are some glimmers or some pictures of that. I think we've talked quite extensively about that one. We can talk about any questions that you may have there. And then the next thing is I wanted to talk about the public health approach, because I'm building towards a certain place where I'm going, is we're known and as part of prevention to define the problem, identify risk and protective factors, develop and test those prevention strategies, and ensure widespread adoption. So the reason I'm talking about that is there are some new issues that are on our horizon. I've lived here my whole life. As I said before, I was conflicted with this presentation just because there are new stressors, youth crisis situation that we're seeing. Many things are escalating that need to be addressed, and those include violence, bullying, mental behavioral health, the suicide rate. As you all know, the Natrona County coroner states that we're 4th in worldwide for highest suicide rate. The director of the Casper Area Chamber of Commerce noted that with recent events due to the population, we could be classified as an unsafe city, or per capita, our crime rates will soar, which will impact economic development and tourism. It is my hope and my belief that everyone in the county would be able to feel safe and live well in our community. You may not know that we also address problematic gambling. So there is that fine balance between having locations that provide for gambling, but also to have services and structure on the other side for individuals seeking help for perhaps problematic gambling. And what we will be doing, and we need to talk about this in the near future with the funding that is coming in through the county, is we'll be working with the Central Wyoming Counseling Center to provide Gamblers Anonymous training for their staff as well as ours, and then handbooks moving forward for individuals seeking that kind of care and working with them. We do have a good working relationship with the Wyoming Gaming Association. We also track lead exposure, so every time there is a child that has elevated lead, we track that with the GIS system that is part of the city-county relationship, just to see if there are any trends. Granted, we don't have high numbers of those, but perhaps we would be over time be able to notice that there are certain parts of town that could be a little bit higher risk than others. We also serve as pilot testers a lot of times, and we have Healthy You, so there's no H on that, and cardiac education. We have blood pressure kits that are available that people can check out. But our areas of concern is we have premature death has been increasing since 2018. 10% of our babies have a low birth rate, under 5 pounds, 8 ounces. 17% of the population are current cigarette smokers. Preventable hospital stays mammography screenings, binge or heavy drinking, and non-fatal overdoses. These are part of data that is available that talks about our county health rankings, which health outcomes puts us in 17 out of 23 counties as far as being least healthy. But I identified programs that addressed each one of those. And then the high-risk areas, sexually transmitted infections, chlamydia and gonorrhea continue to increase. There's one mental health provider per 210 individuals. There's an increase in the unemployment rate, higher percentage of people without health insurance, opioid-related hospitalization, needs for addiction treatment but not receiving, lack of diabetic education. I believe I've talked to you in the past about that, access to supplies, providers, and support, and the inability of people knowing how to access the healthcare system. There's a significant reduction in pediatricians, and with that, then there is also a significant reduction in the number of pediatricians or providers providing the necessary and required childhood vaccinations. So we try to address all of these things. One program that we have through you all is the binge drinking, underage drinking, tobacco, suicide, and substance use through the community prevention program. One of those areas that I think is significant is we provide gun locks to the community partners that have request them to distribute out to the public. The next slide is actually talking about upstream and downstream, a public health framework, which is very small as well. But it identifies like where we can make change with at the beginning to the end and where we can have impact with that. The following one is also a different graphic of upstream and downstream. Most of what we're seeing today are the downstream impacts. I was told recently at a meeting that we're too far downstream to make impact on our community, and I disagree with that. I think we can make a difference, that we can start looking at those upstream strategies from improving community conditions, working together as a community as a whole for policies and regulations, moving on down to addressing the individual social needs, community-wide social factors that influence health, all working together. Right now, we're seeing a lot of agencies coming forward and wanting to do and make a difference in the community, particularly with our youth. However, there are many different factions. There is not one group that's kind of leading, so we're not making significant progress forward. It kind of needs to be a united front, but there are many people that are working on that. We also work collaboratively with our community partners. We're working on grants that we're putting in together with other agencies. We work a lot with our Central Wyoming Counseling Center, which Dr. Dowell has required our staff to all carry Narcan, so we completed that training. We're sharing staff potentially. There's shared concern amongst all that have the community behavioral health. And we were one out of 25 slots that were selected nationwide for the Behavioral Health Technical Assistance Program by the CDC that we went and worked collaboratively and hoping to bring forward some programs. We also are part of the Natrona County Council for Safety and Justice, which we have been part of since the beginning of 2021. Out of that has come Credible Mind, which I'll talk about here in a moment, a situation table, which I'm not sure if anyone has brought to your attention, that there are a group of community agencies will bring individuals forward in a very strategic and evidence-based approach and identify ways to help that individual to get them out of that immediate risk or crisis. So that is just now beginning as effective as of today. We also do downtown outreach. We take one of our trailers and provide testing, as well as resources that are available. And we also work in the RISE program where we go to the jail and provide education for those individuals that are in that program. Recently, I attended the Wyoming Business Council Harvard Kennedy School training for the PDIA toolkit, which is a 12-week commitment address, and our group identified behavioral health as their main project. And so on the next page, you'll see the fishbone diagram of the lack of behavioral health services and our concerns and what we identify are problems that are leading to the issue. And what we're looking to do is create a roadmap, or if you will, like the Candyland or Chutes and Ladders that takes a person through the different services that are available to them through behavioral health to hopefully give people the ability to know where to access care. On the next page is Credible Mind, which is something that we did collaboratively with Community Action Partnership. This is a mental health resource. It's a dashboard that you can go and click on. You can take assessments. You can find out if you're burned out. Don't suggest you all do that today. May not be a good day for you to do that assessment. But you also can get resources, etc. What it is intended to do is looking at an iceberg. Most individuals that are receiving care or help are above the water, but then below the water is usually a larger, bigger chunk of the iceberg. This isn't intended to help keep individuals, give them resources and tools to prevent them becoming part of the bigger problem. So, great resource. We're really just getting it rolled out and active. I do the assessments. It keeps track of them. You can go back and do them later. If you can't sleep at night, it does give you those resources. So perhaps that's what you'll do. So we know and we hear that there are very limited funds. And everyone has great need in the different respects that they do. But I would say that our community is at a crossroad where we need to invest in the safety and well-being of all of our citizens. The health department wants to be part of the solution. I know many times when people say, fine, you can tell me what the problem is, but if you don't bring forward a solution, there's no point. We want to be part of that solution, using our prevention strategies and ability to analyze the problem and stay connected. We need to be united. For a community-wide effort for change, we need to continue to invest in health, and we can't wait another day. With that, I would ask if you have any questions. I'm sure we can go back to the budget now.
Commissioners, questions for Anna or Christy? Tracy, Madam Clerk, I think this is one of the updated sheets. Well, I'm not sure if it is. Where are we at currently on expended budget for current fiscal year? In
Mr. Chairman, they've currently expended $551,972.97.
And the budgeted amount is $735,964. Anna, do you anticipate that the full budgeted amount will be expended before the end of the fiscal year?
Yes.
I have asked another outside board for their budget for both the current fiscal year and the upcoming fiscal year. I don't see that provided in the materials you sent in. Can you get those to our clerk and Michelle?
So that wasn't what you were looking for that was sent yesterday.
I
It was
don't,
sent in an email that talked about our fiscal year 24 as well as fiscal year 25.
okay, so if you think it's been provided, it may be in my inbox. I don't need it right now, this moment, but I know it's something that some of us will look at as we go through the process.
Yes.
Maybe you and I can both look back and see if that was sent to me, and I'm getting a nod. It's the
Mr. Chairman,
judge.
it was sent to you yesterday as well, yes.
Okay, we'll get copies printed off and provided to the commission.
So one of the big things that I would bring note or attention to when you do receive that, we have had open positions in the past. We are fully, we have one opening is all that we have right now. We always anticipate an increase on insurance. Last year we did not see that, but we always anticipate that we will see that. The tires and oil and supplies that go along with auto expenses. We're moving a lot of our travel, if required, into our workforce grant so that it does not come against our regular funds. We will receive funding for one additional car for $44,450. Our COVID vaccine, in the past year, we spent $165,000 on COVID vaccine. Fortunately, we were able to, for the most part, break even on that. COVID did make life a little bit easier, but now we are returning to that prior state. We've never pulled from our reserves. We do everything that we can for cost savings with travel and supplies, making sure we have what we need to do the job.
On that last point, you haven't pulled from reserves.
To make the budget balance. We've always come in the black that we don't have to go against our reserves for any kind of area. Our grants are really, if an individual works for a grant, they are fully supported by that grant. It does not come against city and county. So one thing that you will see on there is we did slice out what grant revenues are and grant expenditures so that you're truly getting an eye of what city and county funds are paying for.
Right, and I'll have a follow-up question for a minute on that. I appreciate that the funding request is status quo with last year, and I also appreciate that costs and inflation aren't necessarily status quo. In fact, I've yet to see anybody, any company, any organization for which that's true. But are there areas off the top of your head of where the health department can cut expenses? Maybe some discretionary areas where maybe you're not cutting programs, but maybe you're, I guess, tightening the belt in some areas.
So we have done as much of that we possibly can. My fear is that if we don't secure some additional funding this evening, that we will have to lay off a maternal child health nurse or another staff member, just due to the expenses that go with that. That is probably why I'm looking very heavily into operational funds. For example, in our clinic, we're looking to partner with CWCC. They're not able to hire nurses, so we would take some of their patients, do telehealth with them for the mental health component, but the nurses at our department would continue the, immunizations, testing, and support that they would need from that avenue. So we're looking at ways to do things differently. By no means do I want to cut staff. We just continue to try to reduce everything throughout the year that we possibly can, but we've taken all the cuts out that we can. We do have our staff member who has been there for over 20 years will be retiring this year. And so bringing a new person in for a department level manager job has a lot of concern. We had hoped to be able to provide some extensive training, working side by side with that. We reduced that down to only 2 months that we'll be able to do that.
You've alluded to a meeting tonight in front of the city for a budget request. One of your slides that you presented was for inspections, and it was broken down by jurisdiction. I see that the city percentage for inspections is roughly 85% of the total number of inspections that you do. And those would be everything from tattoo parlors to restaurant, code,
Right.
health, safety, environmental health,
Yep.
right?
Our majority of our work that we do at the county is in our septics, while most other things fall into the city or other city and township.
Yeah, and I see this 85% is the percentage I came up with, and all other jurisdictions comprise 15%, 1-5, not 50, 1-5. With respect to 50%, I see on this letter that supports your budget, your narrative, environmental health, which I think is inspections. You have that broken down 281,000, 50/50. That is 5050 city, county. My thinking is that one could be closer to 85%, 15%. The county might at this point continue to cover mills and the towns, but that $281,000 split evenly is one at least yellow or orange flag for me. And so hopefully you'll get full support for the city for an increase of that 10%. Are there other funding models that the health department could pursue overall so that you could bill towns and cities on a service, to
Fee for
this
service.
patron goes to this municipality or that town?
We actually have started talking about some of that in light of some recent events. We've looked at taking what an inspector does do, where it's located, kind of doing a cost analysis of that, and what would a fee for service look like in that situation, right? It's not been done before, but it's actually in some of the conversations that we've been having, looking to try to figure out how can we make ends meet, recognizing that you all provide this funding, the city provides this. It goes back to always trying to figure out who we really do serve. And there's been conversations for as long as I can remember of who do we serve more of. Not as black and white as it could be. And we're hoping that that will show perhaps maybe more where things could be.
Well, I don't think that it comes into play in this budget cycle, but I'd encourage you to continue to look at the advantages and disadvantages, the cost-benefit analysis, so that your board and this commission can have more discussions about it in the future. I know your budget will change in 2026 for reasons of the new health department building coming online. I don't think that's an issue in your current year's budget, is that right?
Right.
And I know that you could work with our maintenance director, Garrett, to, kind of estimate what those costs are going to look like, where they're going to go up and where they're going to go hopefully down in some respects. What in your current budget year is the amount budgeted to address the issues of violence, bullying, and mental health? I think I heard you talk about one item that might be binge drinking and gun locks under the community prevention programs. Are there other budgeted amounts to address this problem that we've been especially seeing this calendar year?
Unfortunately, there is not. It has been done solely by myself at this time. While we want to, we utilize our community prevention to help with that component that they can do. We know that maternal child health catches moms and babies. That's a really big concern and a really big question that we continue to look at funding. There are 4 grants that we're looking to do collaboratively with other agencies to address that.
Well, can your community prevention program, what is the amount you've budgeted for this fiscal year or this coming fiscal year for community prevention program?
So we, that I can't give you right off of the top of my head because it is broken up in different ways. They're also in a new grant cycle. So we will have a new contract effective July 1st. And I don't think that we've gotten the final information from them yeah. So the biggest thing with the funds that we get for community prevention are typically given to, for example, Mercer House to help support education with bullying and those kinds of things. So we're more of I can't think of a better word than saying like a broker of community prevention services. So we'll give Mercer, Boys and Girls Club, Casper Pride funds for education or whatever the case may be, is how the model has been done currently. There are some very tight restrictions that don't allow us to use that funding back into the department to provide those services. So it's more of a giving out into the community to different agencies.
And I fully support that, but what I'd like you to consider today, and Ms. Nelson, you too, is to say we are committing, pick a number, $10,000, $25,000 to, we're going to put it in our budget, because I don't think this one should wait till fiscal year 2026. And you're talking about people, different organizations trying to do different things, and maybe there's not enough coordination in that respect, and I agree. But I'd like to see you consider in this coming year's budget a specific amount that maybe that's, an undefined use of it, but that if the community or your health department in the next couple months comes up with something that needs money, you can be the first to say, we've allocated some money for it. Because I think that what I hear is everybody wants to do something about this problem, but there isn't a plan yet. There isn't coordination yet. And so I think you can lead the way, frankly. And this, the money might not be enough to do a whole lot, but you're leading the way. And so I'd ask you to consider that. When I asked you if there's discretion in your budget, you know, I don't know enough about your budget to tell you, oh, okay, we'll take it from here or take it from there, or ask the commission for $20,000 more. I don't know what that answer is, but I'd ask you to consider that in the next week or two.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Other commissioners, questions, comments? Go ahead, Commissioner Milne. That's your name, right?
Not sure at this point. Thank you for coming in. Have you talked to, like, for your gun safety locks?
The gun locks.
Yeah. Have you talked to an organization like NRA or anybody to partner with them? They used to have that program.
No, I think that is definitely something that we could look into for getting additional. Is that what you're?
Yeah. And then there, you know, the other items that you had listed, there's different organizations out there too. I don't know if you've reached out to all of them, but see if you can't partner with other people or whatever. And then the other question I had was your telehealth. Is it overwhelmed? Is it being used so much that,
Telehealth.
yeah.
Actually, we have not actively pursued that. Typically, the biggest challenge is that provider that's on the other side. Finding those individuals has been the challenge. So this would be something new that the department would be doing, very specific to, like, it's meeting both of our needs kind of thing. We do genetics through telehealth and things like that. It's still finding that provider on the other end that seems to be the biggest challenge that we have. We do have a part-time nurse practitioner that we share with Community Action Partnership. But I think that's the biggest thing that we have right now is we're at a new place, you know, post-COVID with very different issues than what we had before. And so with the strategic planning, my hope is that we will be able to identify those different areas and like the significance and what part we play. And maybe telehealth is one of those, but yet finding that provider on the other side to do things, or changing how we do some of our programming would also have to fit into that. We're kind of at a clean, doing the work that we have to do, the state statute required stuff, but we're at a part that we're trying to figure out, okay, is this still relevant? Is this what we need to be doing, or do we need to shift gears? And I think that's why I'm so uneasy, is we need to shift the gears.
The reason I'm asking is apparently the library's doing that. And it seems like it'd be a better fit for actual nurses and health department to be doing that than.
I think the library's part of the telehealth is where a person from the public who may not have access to internet or different things along those lines, where they would need to make an appointment with their provider. And then they can use the pod to connect, and it's HIPAA compliant, safe, secure, all of those kinds of things. We have talked about what that looks like in our department. You know, the libraries definitely were the places that they've started with.
Just a thought.
It's a big unknown, right?
Yeah.
Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense that it'd be a good fit for something for us to consider, definitely. So, and we're in the middle of strategic planning. We're going to pick that back up and look at how we can attack some of these behavioral health and other needs. The Credible Minds platform that's coming out is an app. I'd really love to see that in the schools and, you know, in the community, and really advertising that, because they have such good services on there and they connect people to services. And people are just on their phones all the time. I always tell our handbooks have limited utility anymore. It's,
And you're working with the, like, the district and whatnot, the school district?
not
as well?
yet. So we'll see what they would have to say, of course.
All right.
You're working with school district to keep cell phones out of schools?
No, behavioral health in the schools.
All right, and I was mostly joking, but I think that would, personally, I think that would help our kids in schools. Commissioner Laird?
Just a quick question that you alerted me to. What happened to our pediatricians?
We've had a significant number retire.
Yeah.
And we just have had no backfill for that. I do have a number of staff who have need of a pediatrician. And it kind of seems like if you get a pediatrician, you're lucky. You win the lottery, so to speak. The call system is very different. It is not the same as it once was. And then they choose not to provide vaccines. So then that shifts into something that we
Just a
need.
minute, back up a minute. Who chooses not to provide vaccines?
The pediatricians
They don't
can
wanna-
choose.
they
They
don't-
don't want the commitment or have to do the reporting that goes along with it.
Anything, are they having trouble with the hospital at all?
That,
I don't want to put you on the spot there.
yeah, I don't know that I know the hospital had a pediatrician.
The hospital has pediatric hospitalists, so the pediatricians don't really see patients in the hospital. It's a new model, newish. Banner did recruit a pediatrician for the community. I think you're talking about vaccines for children,
Yeah.
correct?
Yes.
So there's a lot of paperwork and stuff that goes along with state-free vaccines. So I think the only people in Casper that provide that are you guys and CHC, maybe family practice.
And a couple other providers, but it's very limited to what it once
So
was.
if a young family comes in, little kids and needs vaccines, do you provide those for the kids? Are they free or do they have to pay for it?
We do have, we follow the program for the uninsured, vaccines for children. We have that program that exists. I think the biggest thing is we have to be able to let the people know that that is a place that they can go and get vaccines. When we used to do back to school events, when people were getting kicked out of school because they didn't have the required vaccines, we used to be tremendously busy those days. They've changed how they do that and what that looks like. So we are fairly steady throughout the year for kids to get vaccines, but it definitely is a concern when you're not going to your pediatrician, then you have to add one more step to go and get a vaccine.
So are our children under vaccine in this county?
That is one of the things that is being watched as a caution.
Are you seeing an increase in vaccine preventable?
Actually,
Cases?
we are, in
Not
other,
here, though.
not here, but in our surrounding communities and across the United States, measles is definitely something that has come back to light. Some vaccines that we had that got rid of diseases that we haven't had to talk about for a while have started to become around again, not necessarily here, but it could continue.
Okay, any last comments? We don't have anything from this side of the table.
I just want to say y'all have been a good partner to the health department for as long as I've been on the board, which is the last 5 years, and we sure appreciate you.
Thank you, and thanks to your board.
Thank you very much for your time.
We start up again our regular work session at 1:30. I think Michelle has provided us with a revised agenda. I think there was a change, but we'll see everybody here at 1:30. We'll talk about the Collective Health Trust. and Memorial Board of, Collective Health Trust and Banner. And it's a Q&A session. So we'll have an hour to ask our questions. We are recessed.